Welcome to the Business of Apparel podcast. This is the place to learn how to start and scale your own apparel brand and fill it with loyal customers for years to come. I'm your host, Rachel Erickson, owner and CEO of Unmarked Street, and I can't wait to share this episode with you. Welcome back to the Business of Apparel podcast. I am your host, Rachel Erickson, and this week I have been hearing a lot in social media and in the news recently. I've been hearing the word burnout again a lot. And back when I started this podcast, I talked a lot about burnout and my personal story with burnout and how just detrimental it was to my career when I was still in corporate. And I think it's not unusual to hear right now that people are burning out again, especially on the small business side and on the entrepreneurial side of things. I was watching a live video this morning where a brand owner had come on and she was just talking about how hard it is to just keep grinding in this economy where people are not spending their dollars on the kind of goods that we're making in our industry because it's hard to buy school supplies and it's hard to buy groceries right now. And so I think it's almost inevitable that burnout was going to be like kind of creeping back into a lot of our lives. And so I'm not surprised to hear that burnout is back. But I wanted to take a little bit of time today to just walk through what we're doing differently at Unmarked Street to try to make sure that we're not burning ourselves out, because so many of us inside our company have actually burnt out of the corporate industry ourselves. We've had to put a lot of things in place to make sure that we don't do that again on the entrepreneurial side or while we're working for our clients. I also just want to then talk a little bit about how we try to relieve that burnout for our clients too. And so if you are starting to feel a little bit of burnout in your own career or at your own brand, or you're noticing people around you kind of starting to get to that burnout to a point where like you really start to notice that they can't focus, you start to notice that they need a lot of time off to be able to kind of get back into themselves, there's just a couple of tips that I want to kind of give on this. So number one, we really like to separate work from personal life. So at Unmarked Street, I have always encouraged my team, number one, to communicate with each other openly, but that communication ends when work ends. So we are on email all day with each other. We're on Slack all day with each other. If we need to be texting each other because we're away from our computer, we're doing that. But I have also been really clear that, number one, I do not have work anything on my personal phone. I also don't have a work phone yet. That's something that maybe we'll look into doing someday when things kind of shift. But when I shut down my computer for the day and I walk away from my desk, I don't even have a way of looking at work unless I decide to go get my like little laptop out that I kind of keep near the couch while we're like relaxing for the evening. But most of the time I leave that closed because I know that I'm trying to have an evening away from being at work every day. So when I bought Slack and we signed up for a subscription and I wanted the team to get on and we wanted to start using that as a communication tool, it was very clear I wanted them to not put it on their phone unless it was something that they really felt like they wanted and needed to do. But like, I remember when I was at corporate and we first got Slack and it was so exciting and it was a cool new way to be able to communicate with your teammates. And we all put it on our phones and all of a sudden I was blowing up constantly. I was getting notification after notification after notification. And 9 times out of 10, it wasn't even something that I needed to hear or know about. It's just like some channel was going bling, bling, bling all evening long. And it was notifying me because someone was using the @here or the @channel improperly. And so I was getting all of these different messages and my phone was going crazy. And so I noticed really immediately when that happened that I needed to get Slack off of my phone. And I ended up telling people at that time, if you want me to be on Slack for this job in the evening, you are going to need to get me a work phone that is going to be separate so that I can keep it elsewhere from like going to bed at night, because I am not going to be listening to notifications all night while I'm trying to sleep. So that is something that I've really encouraged. I also don't have my work email on my phone. I have my personal email on my phone. I have personal text messages. If my team needs to get a hold of me in the evening, like something is urgent, we're not saving lives here. Let's be real. We work in the apparel industry and nothing is really truly urgent, life-shattering, life or death. Now, I understand that there are urgent issues that we feel are urgent inside our businesses and inside our brands, and something could absolutely go wrong with production and we feel like it's life or death. But if we're being really real with ourselves, like we are not doing surgery on somebody, we are not opening up somebody's body, we are not trying to save their life, we are making clothes. And so when you really think that something's urgent, I encourage you to second guess that when it comes to needing me urgently. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you see me quoting here. If you're not watching me on YouTube, I heavily quoting here, urgently need me. You can text me in the evening, and my team has my phone number. They know how to get a hold of me, but that rarely happens because we don't dwell on the fact that things are urgent. We really have to second guess. I encourage my team to really second guess if things are urgent enough to need to be contacting each other outside of work hours. So because of that separation of technology, when I shut down for the evening and I close my computer, it is like a very physical break from being able to walk away. So that is definitely one trick that I can definitely recommend. And I know that sometimes it's hard to take that break from all of the technology. It's especially hard when like social media is on your phone instead. And so I am totally guilty of being on LinkedIn, being on Instagram in the evening. And my husband like totally will give me this sideways glance like, oh my God, are you on social media again? And 9 times out of 10, I'm like answering messages, or I'm making sure that someone who commented on one of our posts is actually getting a response. And so it's not exactly that I'm like just blindly scrolling through Instagram or LinkedIn. I'm in there still kind of working. And so I will be the first to say, like, I know I'm breaking my own rules there by having that on my phone and saying I'm not doing technology in the evenings, but I do definitely try to make at least a break from Slack. I have a total break from email, and we don't really have a work phone number. So if you need to get a hold of me over the phone, you probably have my personal phone number. And I'm not going to lie, if you're going to call me at 8 or 9 o'clock at night and you are not my sister, my parents, or my husband, I will probably not be answering that phone call. I will call you back in the morning. You are more than welcome to leave me a voicemail and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Something else that we try to do at Unmarked Street is enforce a 4-day work week as much as we possibly can. So I really like to take Fridays as kind of what I call my CEO day. If you've been following any like entrepreneurial leaders, they talk a lot about kind of organizing your days in different ways like that. So like maybe team day is Monday and you have all of your team meetings on Mondays. Client days are Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you do all of your client meetings Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then you have like admin day on Wednesday, or you have social media day on Wednesday. So you're doing your recording, you're doing your postings and your scheduling. And then Friday maybe is your like CEO day or your budgeting day. And I like to use my CEO day a couple different ways. I do still do all of my own business accounting. I recently hired a CPA, but we're kind of in that transition. And so what I'm doing right now is still spending a lot of the time in the morning, just kind of rectifying the week's bills, making sure that all of the invoices are out, making sure that everything I was expecting to come in has actually come in. And so I spend some of my day there. I spend some of my day making sure that we're going through, vision a little bit. Like, what does vision casting look like for the next week, for the next month, for the next year? And sometimes when I get really creative feeling, I'm able to kind of vision cast on my CEO days for the next 5-10 years. Like, what are we really looking forward to in the business? And so because I like to use Fridays as my CEO days, I also like to encourage my team to see if they can figure out how to not work on Fridays and get all of their work in on the Monday through Thursday kind of range. And so because of that, we try to build in like a 4-day work week, 3-day weekend every week. And I really encourage my team to make sure that we do that as much as possible. Now, I would love to get us to a point where we're at like very solid, like we are a 4-day work week company. I don't know if I can definitely say that at this point because we kind of are just very nimble. We do what we need to do. And there are definitely weekends where I'm working on the weekend, finishing client work or whatever needs to happen. It's not really super formal yet. Like we don't have set work hours. We're all technically kind of consultants. And so Because of that, we just do what needs to get done. But for the most part, we do try to make sure that all of our meetings, at least, are being held just between Monday and Thursday. And so that might be able to help you too. And if you're at a brand or a company where you can't just start implementing a four-day work week, like I totally get that. One thing that always used to really work for me when I was in a corporate setting is seeing if you can do one of two things. Number one is like summer Fridays is something that you and your team can really look forward to if you can do summer Fridays. Now, Summer Fridays is kind of a program that some brands have where, and I've seen it several different ways. When I used to work at Abercrombie, you were basically partnered with someone who could cover for you closest, right? So like someone who knew my product line, knew my work really, really well, and I knew hers really, really well. So we were partnered together, and we were then able to alternate every other Friday. We were able to take half days. So those were our summer Fridays starting Memorial Day week, and I think it ended Labor Day week. And so every other Friday for, that many weeks, I was able to have a half day and leave at noon. Some companies go above and beyond, and they even do half days every Friday. Sometimes they'll do like a full day off every other day for everybody or for a partner. So there's a lot of different ways where you can structure that. And so that's something that you can get your team to look forward to if you can't go to a 4-day work week. The next step down, like if you can't get either of those things done, which sometimes are hard because those are just like HR policies that are hard to kind of push through if you're just an individual or if you're just part of a small group. The other thing that you can start to really work on with your team is to do a no meeting day. When I was near the end of my corporate career and I was managing a team, we did no meeting Fridays. And that was just a way of saying like, we know we're still here. We're definitely all still in the office. We're still working, but we are not going to have any meetings on this day. This is your day to like be able to get shit done. And so nobody's going to interrupt you. And instead of a meeting every other hour, if you want to go have a long lunch, if you want to go for a bike ride, if you want to go enjoy yourself for a little bit longer today, like those are the kinds of things that we allowed on Fridays because we had no meetings. So that's something else that you can also implement. On the client side of things, I will say when we notice coming into a lot of our different clients' brands, they are reaching a point of burnout, mostly because the apparel industry is really tricky. You think that it's an easy product to make. And we hear this a lot. Everybody owns apparel. Everybody experiences apparel, touches apparel, has been for their entire life, every single day. It's a relationship that every single person on this planet has. They understand what apparel is, they have an opinion about it, and they have some sort of relationship with it. I mean, even if you're a nudist and you live in a nudist colony, you have a relationship with apparel that has brought you to the decision to go live in a nudist colony. So I just want you to think about that a little bit. And as professionals in the apparel industry, who know how to properly get apparel made, how to properly fit apparel, how to properly construct apparel, how to work with factories to make sure that it's done at the highest quality possible. It's always so interesting to me to hear that people just think because it's everywhere and everyone knows about it and everyone has some sort of opinion and relationship with their clothing, that it must be easy to make. Are you frustrated by feeling like an outsider in your own industry? You're not alone. I spent years feeling the same way. Are you tired of endless research and you can only learn this stuff by getting a job in fashion advice? Me too. That's why I created the Business of Apparel online course. My years of insider knowledge condensed into video tutorials, demos, and downloads. Learn at your own pace, no fluff. Just key topics like building target profiles and mastering financials. This information is genuinely unavailable anywhere else. Grow your brand, become an apparel industry aficionado, and unlock millions in potential revenue. The value? Over $50,000 with millions potential for your brand. Don't miss out. Sign up for the Business of Apparel online course today at thebusinessofapparel.com/course. And it is just so far from the truth. If you think about how many different pieces and parts have to be brought together to make that garment that you're wearing, make sure that all of the timing lines up so that those pieces and parts all arrive at the factory at the right time, make sure that everything fits the way that you need it to. That is a very difficult skill to master. So bringing in someone who really knows what they're doing in the way of technical design and fitting is something that I don't think a lot of brands really even understand is something that's going to be needed. And so when we come into a lot of our clients' brands, I think there's just almost a lot of shell shock as to like, we've been trying to do all of this work. We didn't think it was going to be this hard. And yet here we are, we're just struggling. We don't know how to go through just a couple of different proto rounds. We're on like 9th proto of this style that we thought was going to be super easy. We can't figure out why it's so hard. And so immediately what we like to do when we come into our clients' brands is figure out how to relieve them of all of that stress, like taking all of that work off of their plate so that they no longer feel like they're creeping towards burnout every single day is super, super important to us. And the first thing that we like to do is take factory communication off of your plate. So if you think about how many emails you've been fielding from your factory, how many questions you're getting from them, how many times you're missing something because someone wasn't communicating with them on a proper timeline, someone wasn't tracking that, oh, I was expecting a response from the factory today. And so, I don't have a proto on time. Do you have someone in place who's really good at following up with your factory? All of that kind of factory communication immediately gets handed off to me and my team so that you don't have to worry about that anymore. And that alone, we hear, is a big stress reliever for a lot of our clients, knowing that the communication is going into someone's hands who not only enjoys doing it, because we really do enjoy working with the factories at that level, but is also written thousands and thousands of emails over our different careers. So we know how to communicate in a way that is effective and efficient and can help you really get results in a way that maybe you wouldn't have if you were just trying to do emails in your own way. There is kind of a language barrier thing with most factories, and there is a jargon that needs to be used. And so bringing us in to kind of handle that first and foremost is something that we definitely notice is relieving burnout on a lot of our clients' teams. Above and beyond that, like when we come in, it's kind of unheard of, right? Like when you hire a coach to come in and help you understand how to move forward with your business strategically. Like, how do I put numbers in place? How do I put budget in place? How do I figure out what's next for my brand? How do I get out of debt? How do I reach profitability? Like when you hire us to coach you on those things, most people or most coaches will come in and they'll coach you on that. And then it's 100% up to you to execute. And so there's kind of that model, and I've done this a bunch of times. I've been part of a lot of different coaching groups, and we learn at an exponentially fast rate. Like so much is being thrown at us all the time. We're learning about social media. We're learning about marketing. We're learning about sales. We're learning about emails. We're learning about how to be a leader. We're learning about how to grow a team. And then at the end of each session, you have to go off and figure out, okay, what of all of that am I going to try to implement today? Or what am I going to try to execute next? And that I think will absolutely leads to burnout too. But what's really unique about us at Unmarked Street is that we're not just coaching you on those things and then expecting you to go off and do them. We're coaching you so that you can help make the decisions on what needs to happen inside your brand. And then we come in and actually help you execute it, which is a little bit unheard of. Like imagine hiring your executive coach telling you exactly what you need to do in the way of building your brand up. And then not only do they tell you what you need to do, but then they go and do it for you. And so that's kind of what we've been doing at Unmarked Street. And so once we have a plan in place, we help you with your brand audit. We go back and we look at all of your past numbers. We put a strategic plan in place for what the next 5 or 10 years is going to look like for you in the way of sales, in the way of product line. Then we get to work to developing that product for you. So we're not just communicating with your factory, but we're building your tech packs. We are figuring out how to run all of your fittings for you. We are maintaining your visual line plan and your Excel sheet line plan. We're monitoring your calendar. Are we hitting all of the timelines on time? We are running your weekly stand-up meetings to make sure that everything is actually happening the way that it's supposed to. And if we're behind on a deliverable, how do we catch up and how do we manage that? How do we mitigate the risk? We come in and we become that team for you. And so that above and beyond anything is what gives the most time back to our brand owners, to our clients. And this is the kind of thing that we see that immediately, absolutely takes burnout off of their plate. And so they're left with the responsibility of figuring out how to lead, how to market, and how to sell their apparel. But when it comes to product creation and a business strategy, we've got them covered. The other thing that we're doing really differently that has been a little bit controversial at Unmarked Street is that we are staying 100% remote. And the reason that we are doing that is number one, because I love my team. And after the pandemic and after working from home and seeing the productivity that we could get out of people when they were working from home and had a real life work balance, I swore that I was never going to make people move for a job or come into an office unless they wanted to. Now, we're maybe getting to a point where in the next 5 years, Unmarked Street might open up an office and all of my employees will be invited to come work with me personally if they would like to, but it will never be a mandate. It's never something that I am going to make them do. Because of that, number one, because we're remote, I can hire the best of the best. And I have. The people who are on my team are some of the best in the industry that I have ever seen do the jobs that they do. And I am humbled and honored to get to work with them and to get to lead them into client work that we find together. So that is definitely one reason for sure why we do that. Number two, we're finding that it's a huge cost savings. So for me to not have to pay relocation fees for my team, for me to not have the overhead of an office and having to pay rent and all of the utilities of a building that would require us to be local together, I'm actually able to reduce my prices. So in a market where, we're a pretty high ticket consulting agency, we have 55 plus years of experience behind us and we are not cheap, but because we are so efficient, because we're really productive, because we're working from home and we have our own processes and we have our ways of working and we're making it work and we're amplifying exactly what everybody is really good at. Because of that, we are actually able to offer our clients a better rate than some other agencies out there who are probably charging a little bit more because they do have a building to pay for, or they do have a team that needs to be trained. And so they're not bringing in the best of the best because they're trying to be local. And I'm not saying that if you're working with a consulting agency that's local or who has a facility of any kind that they're overcharging you. That is not the absolute truth. I'm just saying that I know for sure at Unmarked Street, we are able to reduce our prices and offer better packages to our clients because I don't have that overhead. And so that is definitely something that has helped us as we've moved forward. I really challenge those of you who are out there thinking that apparel absolutely has to be made in the same room with a bunch of different people. There is a lot of efficiency that we're finding by being remote. There's this thing called meeting creep. I know I've talked about it before quite a bit, where we come into a meeting room when we're all actually physically together and we start going off having different conversations. We bring up some other topic that was had in a meeting yesterday. Somehow we're recapping last week's fitting instead of going through this week's fitting. For some reason, we are noticing that does not happen in a remote setting. People are really dialed. They know that they need to arrive on time. They know that everything needs to be prepped. And so we're able to really focus as we're having more remote fittings and more remote meetings and more virtual sessions. I just want to challenge your thinking on that. And if you're at a brand who is definitely mandating that everybody start coming back to the office, I just hope that it is for a team camaraderie purpose, because that of course, there is absolute perfect reasoning there as to why you would want to build up team camaraderie and get everybody kind of on the same page, get people to know each other better. I personally believe that you can do that remotely and by having a few key strategic, very good in-person meetings throughout the year. But more power to you if you think that having everybody in the room together is a necessity for that reason. I just want you to consider whether or not you are getting the best of the best help by asking people to move or relocate, especially if you're not able to offer relocation packages to them. So just some food for thought. I know that that's controversial, and I'd love to hear from you if you're interested in having a conversation about why remote would never work for you. I'd love to have that conversation because we are seeing it work. And so there might be some ways that we can help each other understand the process a little bit better. If this episode was helpful to you, I hope it was. I hope I gave you at least one little tidbit of how you can step away, take one big step away from that burnout line that you might be approaching. And I would love to hear from you. We'd love to have you review and leave us a 5-star review for the podcast. That is always very much appreciated. And if you have any questions for me, you can always send me a comment via YouTube. You can put a comment below the video here if you're watching on YouTube, or you can reach me at unmarkedstreet.com/contact anytime. See you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Apparel podcast. I would so appreciate hearing your thoughts on the show. And if you know someone who could benefit from it, please share it with them. My biggest desire is to help other apparel professionals understand the nuances of our industry so we can all work toward making better product for a better world. If you would like to connect further, I'd love to invite you to send me a message through my website, thebusinessofapparel.com, where I do weekly trainings through my YouTube video channel, a weekly newsletter, blog articles, and so many more resources to help you start and scale a profitable apparel brand. This podcast is produced by Box 7 Media, who I cannot speak highly enough of. If you're looking to start your own podcast, you can reach out to Jeremy at Box 7 Media on LinkedIn anytime.